Hey guys, welcome to Book Review 148. Today I am going to be reviewing South of the Clouds, Travels in Southwest China by Bill Porter. Okay, as the title would suggest, this book is about Bill Porter's travels through Southwest China, specifically the three provinces of Guangxi, um, Guizhou, and Yunnan. Um, Something interesting about this area is the majority of people in China are Han Chinese or ethnically Han Chinese. Chinese is not actually an ethnicity, it's just a description of the country itself. Much like, say, in the United States, where German American or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These people are nationally Chinese, but ethnically, in many spots of these three provinces, actually minority people that have cultures very unique and situated to this particular area. Um, the author travels first up the West River or the Z River up to Guangzhou and uh, Guilin, excuse me, um, and then on to Lengzhou, I believe, which are sort of part of the Guang, I believe, people. Uh, they are the biggest ethnic group, sub-ethnic group, other than non-Chinese in all of China. They're not maybe as well known as, say like the Mongolians or the Tibetans, because their culture is somewhat similar to Han Chinese. But a classic example of a difference that's mentioned in the book is the fact that these people will have caskets and coffins on the premise at their owned property prior to an elder person's death, which is seen as auspicious. In mainstream Han society, any association with death before the person actually dies is very inauspicious and brings very bad luck. So that's just one kind of classic example. Let's see. He travels. Ooh, there's a good picture of Yangzhou, not Guangzhou. Yangzhou, which I've actually been to. Uh, he something. This book kind of corresponds to a number of pictures that Bill Porter took while on this trip. I get the impression in the book, though it doesn't quite mention it explicitly, that sort of this photo album of his trip came first and was published independently. And then later, he wrote a book about kind of his travels through all these areas. Um, Something else that's kind of interesting. This area is, I'm saying a lot of all this stuff that's interesting. Uh, this area is a very mountainous area and with very steep valleys and gorges. So unlike, say, like the plains of northern China or the flat rice growing regions of southern China, southwest China really has very unique um, tribes in relatively small areas, and even within the various tribes, I really shouldn't call them tribes, like minority groups. Um, there's big differences even within those minority groups, depending on what province you come from or what area of the province you come from. Um, they divide so much that even there are groups of minority people that have settled more in the valleys versus settled more on the mountains. I believe the group that's the Pinyin group, they're close to Pingang. Hmm. Let me see if I can't find this group here real quick. Uh, the Han. Oh no, this is still talking about the Chuang, the Chang. Yeah, but there are definitely like some groups that are more mountainous people. They tend to not be as big of rice growers, more like maize or like barley type growers. Whereas the people in the valley tend to be valleys tend to be more terraced rice growers. That's kind of a cool picture. I'll show you some of these pictures throughout. You can see there's that big pagoda right there. the Tsung people. Um, yeah, so he kind of. I'm not sure I can get through every single ethnic group, but I do want to show you some of the pictures from here. Let's go back to the map. Uh, I'd say like one of the biggest differences between Han Chinese and this group is these groups is that the clothing is quite different. A lot of these people actually did not come under Chinese influence until the Yuan dynasty, or what's better known as the Mongols, who ruled China for a time period in the 1100s. Before then, they were mostly independent kingdoms. Um, and truth be told, some of the oldest groups in China, in terms of human migration, come from this area. Um, Also, something that's been found is, um, the early groups were not necessarily civilized; they were more hunter gatherers, and it was predominantly thought through most of modern history um, that really these groups in the South developed civilization or anything beyond just sort of a basic kind of village structure much later than the Chinese did in the north under the Qin Empire. But it's actually been found that advanced civilizations kind of came into being at the same time that they did in the Han majority in the north. It's just that maybe they didn't become so powerful that they were able to rule large areas, but they had a lot of the advanced, or for the time, the Bronze Age advanced technologies of people in the rest of northern China. Uh, he visits the Stone Forest. Let's see some of the other things through here. He visits the south of Yunnan province. I guess I'm going through a lot of. I really went through Guizhou pretty quickly. Kind of, Guizhou had a lot of different ethnic groups that were cool. He goes and sees a nature reserve. He sees the Puyi people, the Huangzhuzhu Falls. That's in Guizhou, I believe, which is one of the most famous waterfalls in all of China. Oh, here's the Silver Necklace Falls. Look at that thing. It's like coming down from all different directions. It's really cool. But then he have Shuttlecock Cave. But then he eventually gets into Yunnan. First, Kunming. With each of these ethnic groups, there's also a lot of creation stories that exist. I'm not going to go through every single creation story, but a lot of them kind of involve sort of early god beings, as well as animals are very prominent. Something that's prominent is that, for the most part, humans were, unlike, you know, Western mythology, humans were not necessarily created separately from animals, but they were created at the same time period, or if not the same time period, in the same guise as animals. But then some event happened that separated them from the animals. I guess that's a little bit similar to Adam and Eve, but it never makes the distinction that in most of these examples that humans are somehow the chosen species over the animals. That's kind of a cool picture. Guardian of a temple. He has a lot of Tibetan influence, which means a lot more angry gods, particularly in Yunnan. The stone forest that's known as cartographic. Ooh, that's a better picture. Anomaly in that kind of. I think what happened was there was a lot of sediment that came, but then there was hard stone and soft stone, and over time, the soft stone wore away, and the hard stone was left, and you had these very strange looking forests. He eventually goes south into. Let's see if I can't find it. The the Motung people. No, and the Aini, Anoi people, the Maolung, um, Minglung. So I'm just pretty much listing types of peoples now. I wish I knew what the southern part of Yunnan is. What's interesting specifically about Yunnan is that you really have three areas of influence. You have the area of Kunming, which is the capital, which has a lot more Han Chinese influence, but there's also some ethnic group there that was really sort of the dominant player in the region, even before the Han Chinese kind of took over the whole area. But sort of kind of in the same dichotomy that you now see in China with Southwest China in general, both in the southwest, in a southwest of Yunnan province, the far south, very close to Laos and Myanmar. There were a number of groups of people that were much more Southeast Asian in influence. I believe they were much more Theravada Buddhism instead of Mahayana Buddhism. I could be pronouncing that wrong. But in addition, in the northwest, that's at a very low elevation. Kunming's kind of at a middle elevation, but in the northwest, close to Dali and Dali and Lichang, there's much more sort of a Tibetan influence, and specifically the city of Dali and Lijiang have a lot of historical buildings that go along with them, a lot of historical streets. It's one of the areas that maybe because it was so remote during the Cultural Revolution didn't have as much of effect from the Red Guard, though that was certainly felt. And it's really just sort of, even in a country like China that has a lot of examples of history, they feel like very historic towns. Let's see if I can't get to one of the pictures here. Perfect, Delhi. Yeah, see, there's the three pagodas famously in Delhi. The Delhi South Gate. Oh yeah, I thought this was really cool. They call this little Pautu Island, and that's actually in a Lake Erhai, I believe, if I'm getting that correct. That is along Dali and is kind of one of these, kind of like in Colorado or something, remote mountainous lake that provides a lot of scenic beauty to these people. Let's see if we can't get up to Lichang. Jade Dragon Mountain. Jade Dragon Peak Temple. Tiger Leaping Gorge. This is something that's very famous in the area. Bill Porter did not walk the full length of the gorge, but actually just went and saw it. It's one of those things that you have to see in your lifetime. Because it isn't technically a canyon, I think a canyon, just by definition, has to be more or less only worn away by, the river over time, over erosion. But it's actually created by two mountains that run through or two mountains and the river runs through it. Is actually classified as a gorge, but is much bigger from top to bottom than the Grand Canyon, and is one of the most awe-inspiring sights in all of China. Even a cynic, I think, would say that. Kind of ends up its final leg, kind of sweeping around a little bit through Sichuan, and sees the Yaomen Earth Forest, and then eventually heads back to Hong Kong, where he lives, where he started his journey, going up the Z River. Overall, I'd say a really good book. I wish that I had done my homework more and written down all of the different ethnic groups. But if you want to know about a China that you don't see kind of in the economic miracle China, in the, red menace China narrative that you get a lot, If you want to see a historical people and how they lived, and really just a perspective of a place that's completely unlike, most likely, unless you're watching this in one of these areas, is completely unlike any area that you have known. You should check this out. One quick note: Bill Porter, in the future, please use Pinion, and let me get to this specific thing. Please use Pinion and not Wade Giles. Nobody uses Wade Giles anymore, but he used Wade Giles in the book. That's the one where it's like just all the city names are wrong. Well, I mean, there's no right and wrong because technically because Chinese is not a Romance language, therefore it doesn't use a Latin script. But almost everybody uses Pinion anymore. They don't use Wade Giles. So please use Pinion in the future. Okay, anyway, great book. Check it out. You get to know about an interesting group that you don't hear very much about. Not an interesting group, interesting groups, multiple. So check it out. South of the Clouds, Travels in Southwest China by Bill Porter. All right, see you guys. Bye.